Kassa found the dragon in a market that smelled of oil and spices. The dragon was small, no larger than a cart dog, with scales that had lost their color and wings stitched with mismatched thread. Traders laughed and pointed, calling it a relic, a toy, a broken thing. Kassa did not laugh. She felt a tug in her chest like a soft bell. She had grown up fixing radios and sewing torn sails, and she understood how small things held large stories. The dragon lay in a shallow crate between a pile of cracked lenses and a stack of old maps. Its breathing was thin, more like a tired engine than a living rhythm. A narrow metal band circled its neck and a tag hung from it with letters that had been worn away. Kassa crouched and wiped a finger across the tag until a faint name showed. The letters did not mean much to anyone else, but they made something warm flicker in her. She bought the dragon with the last of the small coins in her pocket and a promise to return a neighbor's kettle. People watched her walk away and whispered that she had wasted her money on junk. She went home through alleys that smelled of rain even when the sky was clear. She carried the crate as if it were a sleeping child. At the small house by the canal, Kassa and Mila, her partner, unfastened the crate. Mila hummed an old tune as she arranged blankets and warmed water in a tin pot. Mila had hands that could coax seedlings from earth and bake bread that made neighbors stop and listen. Together they made room on the low wooden table and set the dragon in the center like a small ceremony. Kassa worked slowly. She cleaned the dragon's plates with a soft cloth and whispered small, steady things. She found tiny numbers along the dragon's rib, where a maker had scratched details long ago. Under a flap of scale, she discovered a ring of wires braided with threads of a strange pale metal. Mila fetched tools and a light. When they touched the dragon's side, the creature blinked with an eye like a chip of blue river glass. The dragon's voice came like a radio returning to life, grainy and slow. "Operator," it said, naming a role rather than a person. The name on the tag answered with a memory that tasted like cold space and the warmth of someone holding a child's hand. The dragon did not remember faces, but it remembered duty. It said it had been left behind, and the sound of that small confession filled the room like rain. Kassa and Mila made a plan. They would give the dragon a safe place to heal and teach it to trust hands that mended rather than used. They named it Ember for the faint glow along its throat that returned when they fed it oil and warm water. Ember listened and learned the soft words they used. Sometimes Ember would tilt its head and try to speak phrases that had been recorded in its memory, and the words came out like echoes shaped by time. The market had laughed at Ember, but the town did not know what Ember could be. Within a week, Ember's wing moved a degree more each day. Its tail, once a clumsy stub, learned to curl with purpose. The metal in its collar hummed with small power, and Kassa realized that Ember had systems under its skin that only needed careful coaxing, not brute force. She worked at night with a borrowed manual and parts traded for bread. Mila kept the house warm and made lists of things they could sell if they ever needed coin. One evening, a group of boys came to the canal edge and threw stones at a floating lantern. Kassa went to them and found they had heard stories of a guardian that protected ships and heroes. The boys wanted proof. Ember, sensitive and curious, rose to the window ledge and gave a single sneeze of steam. The boys laughed until one of them noticed the dragon's eyes. They saw intelligence there, not the dullness the market had promised, and they stopped being cruel. Children often saw truth sooner than adults. News traveled in small towns by bread and gossip. An old woman from the other side of the bridge came with a cracked teacup and a question about whether Kassa's new pet could fix a stuck clock. Ember examined the clock, emitted a soft buzz, and when the clock's hands moved, the woman's face opened like sunlight. She spoke of times when guardians were trust keepers on long journeys, small machines with promises stitched to their core. She told of names and ships in a day when people left quickly and some things did not return. Not all who heard the story offered kindness. A man from the market who had sold Ember once came to the house with a band of traders. He said the dragon might be worth coins enough to buy a new skiff, and he wanted it back. Kassa refused. The man sneered and called them fools who wasted hope on broken toys. He waved a hand and said he could take Ember by force if he needed to. Mila stood by the door with a broom. She was not a fighter in the usual sense, but she had a way of speaking that made people remember their better selves. She told the trader to leave their home, and the trader, unused to being spoken to like that, felt a strange prick at his chest and left. Word of the refusal spread, and some admired Kassa and Mila for their stubbornness. Others muttered that pride was a luxury for those who had coin. Kassa understood danger better than most. She had fixed 100 engines set to die, and had seen how greed could rust a man. Yet she also knew that Ember's value was not measured in coins. Ember had a name, a memory, and a promise to protect. Kassa felt something else too. a pulse of responsibility that hummed along with the dragon's collar. She had rescued one small story from being swallowed, and in doing so she had made herself a keeper of something larger than her market debts. That night, the two of them sat with Ember between them. Mila braided a ribbon and tied it around Ember's tail, a small soft gift. Ember responded by leaning into the braid as if it were a child's hand. Outside, the stars were thin and nervous, but inside the house there was warmth and a small light that did not belong to any heater. It belonged to the beginning of a promise. Kassa whispered plans to Ember and to the dark beyond the window. They would not hide the dragon forever. They would teach Ember to listen and to warn, to stand watch by the canal and to help small boats find their way in fog. They would learn together how to make the collar sing steady songs again. There would be trips to gather parts, time spent learning strange circuits and old maker tricks. There would be moments of fear and rags of joy. For now, Ember breathed and let the house hold it. Mila hummed the tune and Kassa sketched tiny diagrams by lamplight, the kind of drawings that make broken things remember how to move. Ember's eyes closed halfway and a puff of warm steam fogged the window. It was not a cure. Not yet. But it was the shape of hope being worked at like a small, careful knot. Outside, the market would keep its rumors and laughter. Inside, in a house that smelled of bread and oil, a human and her partner mended a piece of the old world. They began a quiet work that would widen in ways none of them yet imagined. Ember slept and the house listened, and the small fire of a new beginning burned without noise. The days passed quietly after Kassa brought Ember home, and yet something in the air began to change. The little dragon's wings, once torn and folded like old paper, started to twitch again. The glow beneath its scales, faint like candlelight, slowly deepened, warming the small room at night. Mila noticed it first. She touched Kassa's shoulder and whispered, "It's learning to breathe again." Kassa nodded, her eyes soft. She had worked every night beside Ember, cleaning its joints and studying the strange organic metal that laced through its body. Sometimes she thought she could hear the dragon humming in its sleep, a soft vibration that matched the rhythm of her heartbeat. The forgotten signal, one cold evening. As the rain tapped at their roof, Kassa tried to open a sealed hatch beneath Ember's collar. She was careful not to hurt it. When the latch finally gave way, a faint pulse of light blinked like a memory waking. Ember stirred, its eyes opening in twin shades of pale blue. "Operator," it whispered, its voice small and distant as if speaking from a dream. "No, Ember. It's me, Kassa," she said softly. "You're safe here." The dragon blinked slowly. Its throat trembled. Memory, lost. Purpose, unknown. Mila, standing behind them with a steaming bowl of broth, felt her skin prickle. She had never heard such sadness from a machine or a creature. Kassa placed her hand gently on Ember's snout. "Then we'll find your purpose together," she said. The dragon stared at her for a long moment as if trying to decide whether to trust again. Then it lowered its head onto her lap, releasing a low hum that spread warmth across the room. But the moment of peace did not last. The alien visitor. 3 nights later, when the moon hung low and red over the canal, a ship descended beyond the hills, silent, shaped like a tear of metal. Lights moved along its surface, searching the town like cold eyes. The ground trembled slightly and Ember's head shot up, pupils narrowing. "Signal detected," it said. "Unit recognized. Pattern not human." Kassa frowned. "What do you mean?" Ember turned its gaze toward the window. "They are searching. Not for you, for me." Mila stepped back, her hands clutching her chest. "Why would aliens search for you, Ember?" The dragon's voice trembled with static. "Original directive, guardian of sleepers. Expedition incomplete. Human life. Missing." Kassa exchanged a glance with Mila. "Are they the ones who left you behind?" she asked. "Not allies," Ember replied after a pause. "Invaders." "They mocked the guardians. They broke the fleet." The air in the room grew heavy. Outside, lights flickered across the rooftops as alien scouts moved silently through the fog. Kassa realized what this meant. Someone, somewhere, had learned that one of the lost guardian dragons still lived. "We can't stay here," Kassa whispered. "They'll search every home." Mila nodded quickly, already gathering their small belongings. Ember watched them and then spread its wings slightly, testing their strength. Sparks flickered along the damaged joints. "Flight impossible," it murmured. "But movement." "Yes, then you'll walk," Kassa said. "And we'll walk with you." To escape, the 3 of them slipped into the alleyways, moving through shadows and rain. Ember walked beside them, silent except for the faint hum of power running beneath its skin. Every time a drone light passed overhead, Ember lowered its head, its scales dimming until it looked almost invisible in the dark. They crossed the bridge and reached the old scrapyard by dawn. There Kassa found an abandoned transport pod buried under piles of metal. It wasn't built for long travel, but it could hide them for a while. While Mila checked the supplies, Kassa opened the pod's control panel and connected Ember's collar wire to the circuit. "Can you read this?" she asked. Ember blinked, its eyes flashing faintly. "Language? Similar. Processing." A low hum followed, and suddenly the pod's dashboard lit up in blue. "Connection stable?" Mila laughed in disbelief. "You just brought a dead ship back to life." Kassa smiled. "No," Ember did. Inside the pod, they waited for the storm to pass. Kassa dozed lightly, her hand resting near Ember's claw. Mila kept watch, her eyes scanning the distant lights. For the first time since the aliens' arrival, the dragon spoke again. "Humans. Still protect," it said softly. "Still believe." "Of course we do," Mila whispered. "We always have." The secret memory just before sunrise, Ember began to tremble. Its body glowed brighter and faint lines appeared under its skin, like constellations drawn in light. Kassa reached for her tools, but Ember stopped her with a look. "It's not pain," it said. "It's memory returning." From the collar came a projection, a faint hologram flickering into life. It showed a ship drifting in the void, thousands of small pods floating within it. Inside one pod, a sleeping child clutched a small toy dragon. Next to her, a guardian identical to Ember stood watch. "The fleet," Ember whispered. "We carried them. Humans from the old Earth. But the invaders attacked before we reached the colony. I tried to save them." The image flickered, showing explosions, broken hulls, and drifting lights. Then darkness. "I failed," Ember said, lowering its head. "No," Kassa said firmly. "You survived. That means your story isn't over yet." Ember looked at her, confusion mixed with hope. "You can still protect," she said. "You can protect us now." Mila touched Ember's wing and smiled. "And maybe together we can find the others you lost." The storm outside eased. Sunlight spilled through the cracks in the metal walls, catching in Ember's scales and making them glow like liquid gold. The little dragon lifted its head, eyes reflecting both sorrow and determination. "Then I vow," it said, voice steady now, "to guard you. Until my wings are whole. Until the stars remember our name." Kassa reached out, resting her hand against its chest. "And we'll help you find what was lost." For a long moment, no one spoke. Only the hum of the repaired pod filled the air, a heartbeat shared between human and machine, past and present. As the day broke fully, Ember stretched its wings, light flowing through the seams of its scales like fire through glass. The pod's sensors blinked to life, detecting faint signals in the distance. Others like Ember, asleep and waiting. Mila turned to Kassa, her eyes wide. "Do you think they're still out there?" Kassa smiled softly. "We'll find out." And so began their journey, three, souls bound by accident and purpose, setting out to awaken what time had forgotten and to remind the stars what humanity meant. The broken dragon had found its fire again, and for the first time in 100 years, hope took flight. The journey beyond the town began under a bruised sky. The air smelled of smoke and iron as Kassa, Mila, and Ember crossed the valley where the earth had cracked from years of forgotten wars. They moved through the broken remains of machines, ancient harvesters, drones, and rusted hulls of old alien ships now swallowed by grass and silence. Ember walked beside them, its glow faint but steady. Every few hours, its voice would tremble into speech, half data, half dream. "Coordinates, fragments, guardian units, offline," it murmured as though speaking to ghosts. Kassa had built a small tracking device out of spare wires and a radio coil. It hung from her belt, blinking in rhythm with Ember's heartbeat. "It's close," she said one night, watching the tiny light pulse. The signal of another guardian. Mila stirred the fire they had built from old metal scraps and dry reeds. "If we find it, maybe it'll remember you," she said softly. Ember looked at the flames, their reflection dancing in its glassy eyes. "Memory hurts," it whispered. "But I will try." The ruins beneath the star stew. Days later, they reached the ruins of a fallen ship. It was half buried in the earth, its hull torn open like a wound. Glowing vines had grown through the cracks, pulsing with soft light. The markings on the side read Aegis 17, one of the long-lost vessels from the human fleet. Kassa felt her throat tighten. "This was one of yours, wasn't it?" Ember stepped closer, its claws clicking softly against the metal. "Yes," it said, its voice heavy with static. "I was assigned here. My sibling unit guarded the cryo deck." Mila touched the hull gently, brushing away moss to reveal more letters. "Then maybe it's still inside." They entered the wreck carefully, guided by Ember's internal light. The air inside was cold and still, thick with the scent of metal and time. They found the cryo deck after hours of climbing through twisted corridors and half-frozen pipes. Dozens of pods stood in silent rows, covered in frost, but only one was open. Inside lay another dragon, larger than Ember, but motionless. Its wings were folded like ancient paper, and a long crack ran across its chest. Its collar, though faint, still pulsed with a weak orange light. Ember approached slowly. "Guardian 4, it said softly, the name falling like a prayer. "You waited." The other dragon's eyes flickered once, dim and distant. "Unit 7, status, incomplete." "It's Ember now," Kassa said, kneeling beside them. "You're safe." "We found you." The damaged dragon's voice crackled. "Mission failed." "The fleet gone." Ember lowered its head. "Not all. We live. Humans endure." Something like a sigh escaped the broken guardian. Its light dimmed, then brightened once more. "Protect them. Always." The words came out slowly, like a machine remembering how to feel. And then the light faded. Mila pressed a hand over her mouth. Kassa bowed her head, silent. Ember stood still for a long time, then finally whispered, "I will." The awakening before they left the ship. Kassa searched through the wreckage and found a memory core, small, round, and covered in dust. When Ember touched it, sparks danced between their claws and the device came alive with projection. A man's voice filled the air. "To the guardians who remain, if you survive, you must protect what's left of us. The aliens seek to erase every trace of Earth. Our mission was never to conquer, but to preserve. Protect the humans and rebuild." The recording ended and silence returned. Kassa looked at Ember. "This is what you were made for." "And now," Ember said, "it is what I choose." That night, under a sky scattered with blue stars, Ember asked to be repaired completely. Kassa and Mila worked beside the old wreck using wires, batteries, and fragments from Guardian 4's frame. The process took all night. When the first light of dawn rose, Ember spread its wings, whole again. Energy shimmered beneath its scales, a golden pulse that lit the ruins around them. "You did it," Mila whispered. Ember lifted its head toward the rising sun. "No," it said, voice stronger than ever. "We did." The return of the invaders, the peace did not last long. As the sun climbed higher, the air filled with a low hum. Ships appeared over the horizon, sleek, black, alien. The same kind that had once destroyed the fleet. They had followed the signal of the awakening guardians. Kassa felt fear curl in her chest. "We can't fight them." "No," Ember said. "But we can show them something they do not understand." The alien ships surrounded the ruins, scanning the ground with bright beams. Their voices echoed through speakers, mocking tones in languages sharp as glass. "The humans still keep toys," one of them sneered. "Broken guardians and soft hearts." Ember stepped forward, wings unfurled, glowing like the heart of a star. Its voice thundered through the valley. "This is no toy. This is memory. This is promise." A beam struck Ember's chest, but instead of falling, the dragon roared. Light burst from its wings, scattering like thousands of tiny suns. The alien ships wavered, their systems faltering under the surge of energy. "Now," Kassa shouted, activating the wreck's old engines with the control pad Ember had reprogrammed. The ship's remains groaned, then exploded in a storm of light and debris, blinding the sky. When the smoke cleared, the alien ships were gone, retreating beyond the clouds. The last promise, the valley fell silent again. Ember, though scarred and smoking, stood tall. Kassa ran to it, tears cutting paths through the ash on her face. Mila followed, clutching Ember's tag in her hands. "You did it," she said. Ember's glow dimmed gently. "Not victory," it murmured. "Only delay. But enough. For life." Kassa rested her forehead against its warm scales. "We'll keep going. We'll find the others. We'll keep Earth's name alive." The dragon's eyes softened. "Yes, together." And as the dawn rose fully over the valley, Ember looked to the sky where the alien ships had vanished. Its wings glimmered with light, repaired and strong once more. The small, broken dragon that every alien had mocked now burned brighter than any star. And beside it stood two humans. Proof that hope was not something you built in metal or born with wings. It was something you kept alive even when the universe forgot your name. The Guardians were not gone. They were home again. And they would rise,